Oh, man. Come on. Or would you just start? All right, welcome to today's episode of the Australian Lawn and Garden Podcast. A very special episode because we have a friend of the show, Ben van der Giessen, from CatchPro, Australia. He's an inventor. He's a small business owner. He's created some very unique products for lawn care and small businesses. It's a really good episode. We talk about some controversial stuff and things we disagree on. It's good fun. Look, let's get into it. Look, friends, before we get any further into the podcast, this is a real frustrating thing, but unfortunately, we had some audio issues with this podcast. We worked it out before we clicked record. We hoped it would get better. It didn't. What's happening? You might feel that this conversation is a little less natural than all of the conversations that I have. And the problem is that the microphone, when I talk, for whatever reason, the audio completely cuts out on Ben's end. So if Ben is saying something and I chuckle, right, it cuts out what he's saying. You can't hear him anymore. If Ben is saying something and I go, oh yeah, no, the natural stuff that you would say in a conversation, it cuts him out. So we are both aware of that, and because we both have podcasts, we've shown some discipline and we're not talking over the top of each other. But look, the content quality is still there, and maybe some of you wouldn't even notice it at all. But look, usually it's quite light-hearted. We have some good energy on the podcast, and it just feels a little cold, a little more difficult. And it's nothing that there's anything between the two of us or anything awkward or anything like that. It's just we can't really laugh at each other's jokes, or we can't really, just do normal human interaction without wrecking, you hearing each other. So that's that. So enjoy the podcast. If you've noticed that, that's why. It's there for the rest of the episode, unfortunately. We'll fix it for next time. All right, welcome to today's podcast. We've got Ben van der Giessen, or lovingly called Benny Hoover, on the podcast. We're going to talk about a lot of fun things today. This is not going to be the standard podcast that gets done with Ben, because that's been done before. If you want to hear his backstory, Gary Ashton on Aussie Lawn Stars has a fantastic episode about Ben. That's a really good one. I highly recommend it. Go watch that if you're interested. But we're going to talk about a lot of good fun things. Ben, how are you going?
G'day, Luke. How you going, pal? Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on. I asked you the other day. Oh, no, I asked you a couple of months ago, and you're like, oh, you're really busy. And then we had a phone call the other day. It's like, hey, do you want to come on tomorrow? Like, done. Sweet. Sorted. Thanks for coming on at short notice.
That's the best time to get me, because at least I know what my schedule is. Some people will say like, oh, can you do this? And it'll be like 4 weeks from now. And I'm like, man, I don't know, way.
I'm the same. I've got no idea what's going on. My wife is like, can you put all these podcasts on like a calendar? And I was like, ooh, that's it's common sense for most people, but I don't know, it's all in my head.
Yeah, see, I mean, the challenge that you have, that you actually have to tee up, the interview, so you actually have to be on a schedule.
Yeah.
Usually what we're doing is it's like, hey man, when can we meet up? And then we just bust it from there. So anytime we were doing an interview, it's hard, you got to line up 3 schedules then.
Yeah, that's true. Well, do you so for people who don't know, and I think most people would know, you run with your best mate BJ the Skull Sessions podcast, which you describe as the most unprofessional lawn care podcast. Is it in the world or in the country?
I mean, it certainly would be the most unprofessional in the country. I got to admit, I listened to some pretty crappy podcasts lately, not industry related, but just like American ones. And I thought, I mean, these guys are just doing what we're doing. So maybe not in the world, but certainly in the industry.
Well, I love it because it's not like, I mean, this podcast has got a certain flavor to it, and Gary's podcast has got a certain flavor to it, and your podcast has got another flavor to it. And it's like, you get after a while, you're sick of the certain, you're sick of, I've been eating too much garlic, give me some barbecue sauce or whatever. And it's like, that's why I think I like that you guys, you tried to be professional at the beginning, I think, and then you lost your producer. And I think it got better after that, to be fair.
Yeah, I mean, look, I look back. I don't look back that much, but I do look back at those early days, and I actually do. I like the structure, um, and I liked it when we had credible topics. But like the feedback that we're getting is that people just they really enjoy that raw flavor of like real life stories and stuff ups or whatever the case may be. And they just feel like they're talking to one of their mates at a pub. So um, I don't necessarily want to come off like that all the time. I don't mind doing it every once in a while, but mate, it pretty much is like that every episode now.
Yeah, I feel like with you guys, it's two mates having a chat who have both a lot of experience in the industry, and it's just real world. And sometimes it gets, you can be a bit too fluffy and professional. And it's like, no, I want to hear some real world stories. And you're having a chat about your daughter's drinking all your milk the other day. It's like, it's not even, but it's good fun. I like it. Anyways, there's a shout out to the Skull Sessions podcast. Let's get talking about you, Ben. You run CatchPro. What is a CatchPro for those who don't know? We did a couple of ads on our first episode for you. What's a CatchPro? We get the basics done, and then I've got some saucy questions for you.
Yeah, so CatchPro, the business is called CatchPro Australia, and we obviously, we have close to 100 products now, but the marquee product that started all is the CatchPro Grass Catcher. So essentially, it's a semi-universal system that you can put on, a bunch of different zero-turn mowers and stand-on mowers, and ride on tractors to some extent, and be able to offset some push mowing, and have a bit more of a push mowing, effect, or result. And it's also there to really assist the worker. Some people buy our grass catchers just to clean up hedge clippings, or leaves.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, it's one of those things that we're super proud to have it, and it doesn't fit in every business, but clearly we're showing that it works in a lot of business environments.
I think it's become incredibly popular. I mean, while you've been talking, I've been putting it on the screen. Here it is there. That's the website for anybody. catch-pro.com.au. It's basically this metal bagger goes on the side. There you go. There's a photo of it there. That goes on the side of the ride-on. I think it's like what do they cost? New $1,000?
Yeah, $999 plus postage. Is where we've had it. We've had it at that price since its existence. It's supposed to have gone up, but I really just love that $999 price tag. Just from a point of view. Eventually, maybe it'll go up, but we're sort of just offsetting material costs at the moment with my own labor time. So it's working. It's fine.
Well, I was just saying, like, you're going to spend what, $15,000, $20,000, $25,000 on if you're a commercial operator on a. I mean, what's the cheapest commercial ride on? You know all about this sort of stuff, or like you might say semi commercial.
Well, in the full commercial range, I would say the cheapest would be a Husqvarna. I can't remember. I think it's called a PZ something or other, and I mean, just because it's cheaper doesn't really mean it's a bad option. Lots of councils use them. So bang for your buck, and especially they've got guys on them that, trash them. So, they can turn them over every 2 or 3 years. Look, apart from that, in the full commercial range, everyone's pretty comparable.
But you're looking at like 15 grand at least, really, these days. Unless you're talking about a really small machine, right?
Well, you'd get the Husky for around that price tag, but I think these days, if you're looking at full commercial, you're probably up around 20.
Well, yeah. And this is what I'm trying to get at is when you're talking about you're already spending $20,000 on a mower an extra $1,000, and it adds so much versatility that you didn't have before. It's like a no-brainer. I think it's really popular, right? And I think that's the selling point for it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And if you head down, to your local dealer, for example, and even if they don't stock the CatchPro, a lot of times, we have a lot of dealers that are doing, like if you go in and buy a brand new machine, they might do 10% on that machine if you buy a CatchPro. So, sometimes you're kind of getting them for free when you have that upfront cost of the $20,000
Yeah.
payment. And the dealers that are financing them, I mean, for the $8 or $9 a week extra it costs you to add a CatchPro,
Crazy. Yeah.
like you can't do it. And like I said, we've got contractors that they might only use them for one residential client. Yeah, and it's obviously probably a fairly lucrative client, but like I said, we've got contractors that might only use them for 10 or 20% of their jobs, but they just need to have that there.
Hey everyone, I need a little bit of help from you. Just a small little request. We're in the process of having some conversations with some great brands about sponsoring the podcast, and I need one little thing from you to help with our engagement and to help with boosting a little bit of numbers. Could you please just pause the episode right now and share your favorite podcast episode that we've done with a friend? Just send it to anybody, share it out. Hopefully we get some views. If everyone who's listening to this, and yes, I mean you, if you're listening to this right now, I mean you, could you please pause the podcast, click the share button, send it to someone, spam your friends with it, get the word out there. The more people we get, the more attractive we look to brands. The more attractive we are to brands and the sponsors that we can get, then the more of these episodes we can do. If you don't know this, it's taken me about 8 or 9 hours to do one podcast. And so doing a couple of weeks, it really adds up. So we need that financial support. You can share. Did I mention sharing? Could you please share? Did I say we should share? Anyways, thanks for your support, guys. Let's get back into the podcast. How many CatchPros have actually been sold worldwide? Do you know?
So worldwide, Corey Ballard does somewhere around the 1,300 to 1,700 mark per year.
Right.
And that's about 3 years. Now CatchPro in Australia, before COVID, we, had a handful of units. Last year and the year before were our biggest years at about 1,000 units.
Wow.
Yeah, sold each year. So, and we'd be well and truly on track to do that again in 23. We might be on track to actually do more. So,
Wow.
New Zealand sells like maybe 50 a year as well.
So that's what, let's say 3,000 in Australia, 5,000 in America, roughly?
About that, yeah, that'd be about right.
That's a lot. That's a lot more than I was thinking. Because there's 5,000 people on LMCA. So you got 3,000 people? Yeah, that's crazy. Good stuff. Well done.
I mean, as much as I love the LMCA community, because I truly do, like that's not a plug, that's no nothing. Like I actually post my personal feelings on there, right? Like I just because I feel like I can be myself. But there's so many people in the industry that think that CatchPro just relies on LMCA, and look, maybe at one time, maybe in 2020 or something, maybe 2021, that was probably that might have been the case. But ever since we lost Josh from the business and brought on an actual marketing company, like we're touching like 300,000 people a month on just social media with a conversion rate. I don't have the analytics in front of me, but the conversion rate is like through the roof. And not only that, we have a humongous dealer market where, like the everyday consumer is still walking into a shop. They're not really buying stuff online. So as much as we value LMCA, it's now becoming only a tiny percentage of total sales.
So what's the story with Josh? I mean, I can give you a bit of background that you had a guy who was a family member, he was involved in the business, and then there was a bit of a unfortunate or awkward or whatever, essentially a business breakup. I mean, I remember when it happened a while ago, and I was listening to the pod, and it was like the first couple of episodes of the pod, you had this Josh guy in the background, and then, so what happened there? I mean, how much can you talk about? But what happened there with that whole situation?
Yeah. I mean, look, I feel pretty happy talking about it freely. I'll never ever disregard what Josh did for CatchPro. It, when I started CatchPro, I was running Greenscape Solutions full time. I had tons of workers. Initially, we built the CatchPro for Greenscape Solutions, and admittedly, when we built our first unit and mowed our first lawn, we knew that we would go to market with it.
Yeah.
But in the early days, I had them on eBay. I was shipping them to local dealers, and when I mean local dealers, I mean dealers like not even half an hour from my house. Like it was a 30-minute radius. And we had them on Gumtree. And, right at that time, Australian Lawn Fanatics was, really, really, really pumping. And they had their Monday slot to plug a product. Now, I did that and we got tremendous interest. And, so Josh is my brother-in-law. It's Vicky's brother, my wife's brother. And, honestly, like we come from different worlds. And, he really, what happened was my father-in-law was, saying, oh, you should do this, you should do that, rah, rah. And this was at a family thing. Josh has kind of just pulled me aside and he's like, wait, don't listen to my dad. But if you need a heads up on anything, I can give you a hand. And he just sort of became more interested and was really coming from a very genuine perspective. And I still do believe that, but I do think as the baby grew, like his interest became a little bit blurred, and rightfully so. He built the whole website. He used to do the email blast, all that refined stuff that, Ben Giessen coming from contractor work never had anything. I didn't even know what needed to be done. But in saying that, I just would always say to him, I started CatchPro so that I didn't have to worry about employees and clients and all of this other stuff. And mate, he'd send me like, you'd probably love this. He'd send me like spreadsheets upon spreadsheets, and I'd look at this stuff and I'd be like, man, I don't know what the fuck any of this means. Are we allowed to swear on this?
I'm fine.
I won't do that again. I just, was, but it got to the point where I felt like I had a boss,
Right.
a real boss that was like making me do things all the time. And, it all just came to a head one day when a customer abused me and, like abused Vicky really bad. And I was just like I'm not taking this from anyone. So I just went back at the customer and, sure enough, Josh was like, man, you can't do this. And I was like, I can do whatever I want. Like, if I'm in the right. Now, people think that, I am this huge hard ass who, rah, rah. I mean, if the customer's right, man, I fold like a brand new set of sheets. You know what I mean? But if the customer is just being a jerk, then like I don't tolerate that.
Yeah, I understand. You got to stand, and we talked about this sometimes with. I talked about this in the last episode with Jeff. Is sometimes like even with bad reviews, you can respond in a way that is not just folding. And I think most reasonable people will look at that and go, no, that's fair. Like people understand you get bad clients and stuff. And I think it is changing a bit where like the professional way of going about things was just to let everybody have what they want. And you still see that with the big businesses. But I do agree there's a different tactic when you're a small business trying to run something and somebody tries to attack you.
Yeah, I mean, this particular situation was a little bit different where I believe it was a whole lot of small little things accumulating. So the way that we worked was, because cash flow wasn't great in the beginning. Josh wasn't really an investor either. Sure, he funded bits and pieces, which he was paid back, but I believe it was very much a lot of small things that was accumulating, and it just all came to a head. Now there was like I didn't want him to leave. Like I really enjoyed. I think we made a great team. Like he was the background guy that could get things done after hours, and he was very clever marketing, all of that stuff. And I was the guy on the ground. I was the guy in the shed. I was the person that people can relate to because I was one of them.
Yeah.
And the way that the agreement that we had would he would get a percentage of sales. So the more money that he could generate, the more revenue he could generate, the more he got. And it just got to a point where I think coming from different worlds, we just ended up butting heads. But the worst part about it was that he hijacked my whole business and website and everything.
Wow.
I had no, he's just, he sends me links and he sends me invoices and I pay him, rah, rah. It was all under my nose the whole time. I had no idea that my Shopify website, my domain names, not bank accounts, obviously, everything was in his name. Business deals, with ISO tunes and stuff like that. So anyway, thankfully, it was only like a 7 to 10 day period where I was, smoked a lot of durries. And I was a bit lost. I was very, but I had good people around me, like BJ was the very first person who said to me, "You know what, Ben, you just need to go down through the right channels, get a lawyer if you need to. Just don't react at this point." And I had lots of other good people around me like that. So it's as weird as now, man, because like we see each other at Christmas things and kids' birthdays and stuff, and he tries to sort of talk to me, and I don't say a whole lot to him, eh? So it's not that like we get along for the family, but just the betrayal it's just too much for me. So I say g'day, but I certainly don't talk to him about CatchPro, and if he tries to ask me too much, I just kind of just walk away.
Yeah, and look, if anybody out there, this is real world business stuff. As soon as you get people involved, you're going to have people issues. I have not had a story like that where we've been necessarily betrayed, but like I can tell you a story that we had a guy who he was an employee, so it was a little bit different. Like the authorities there's no family stuff, but he was a family member of a friend of mine, right? So now, luckily, the friendship that I have is quite mature friendship, and so we ended up having this issue where this guy, he was really good on the gardening side of things and quite weak on the interpersonal side of things. And it was getting to a point where people were getting quite... it was getting in the way. The way he talked about... how would you put it? The way he was talking to people was a bit blunt and could be seen as quite sort of dismissive. And it got to a point where one day we had our main admin lady in tears because he was talking to her in a way he just didn't realize. He just didn't realise that he was offending people. And anyways, we'd had a couple of conversations about it, and then I said, no, this is a written warning now. So we gave him a written warning. Got very, very offended. Didn't see that he was in the wrong. And then improved for about a week, and then a week later something else happened. And I had a sit down with him and gave him a second written warning. And he got quite upset and ended up basically driving off. And I said, look, you've got an option. You either change your behaviour or go find a different job, right? It's just how it is. We can't work like this. And also at this stage, we had actually had a client cancel with us because they had said that he'd been rude and disrespectful, and it was the same thing. He just thought he couldn't understand how they would feel that way. He was just a sort of blunt guy, Anyways, he drove off, came back half an hour later and said, no, that's it, I'm going to quit. I'm going to take my stuff. I said, no worries. And he has applied to work with us. After about 6 months, things cooled down. He's applied to work with us maybe 5, 6, 7 times since then. And he's realized that, But it's one of those things where I think I don't want to go into details too much, but I think he realized he was on a good roll and things got in the way, but it's still awkward, because there's people in the business still who were hurt by him. There's no opportunity for us to re-engage that relationship because he made his decision. The people who were upset and hurt still work with us, and they've been great for us. It just makes things really awkward. But look, business stuff happens. But then what I'm getting at is, yes, they're eventually, like at my friend's birthday, of course, the sibling's going to be there. You know what I mean? So it's sort of like, I do understand that, but that's real world. If you're going to hire people and get people involved at some stage, unfortunately, not every business relationship goes well. And, it's just the real world. And some people who are solo, they might hear both of our stories and they might have criticisms of, oh, Luke, you should have dealt with that better. Or Ben, you should have dealt with that better. But unless you're in those positions, it's very hard to predict and run a business, and not have those things go bad at some stage,
Yeah, I mean, honestly, Luke, I had a situation before this. I was very tolerant of Josh because I knew he was bringing something to CatchPro at the time that I couldn't really fulfill. And through time, because it has been a while now. I mean, I think I can't remember if it's been a year or two. It's probably been close to 2 years now since Josh's exit. I've developed some of these skills now, and obviously we have a marketing agency and we do like Vicky and I are both super proactive in everything CatchPro, whereas before we were deferring to Josh. But to give you an example, I had just signed my deal with Corey Ballard, right? Which is what really kick-started the Australian market, because once you get a powerhouse with the credibility of Ballard, it gives that product credibility. And we just signed, everything's going great. Now, Corey is a great bloke, and I'm sure he doesn't have the same relationship with all of his other suppliers that he does with me. I consider him as a friend. We've never met. But he had a product that was really impossible for us to import and resell just because margins, transport, logistics, nothing made any sense. So without my knowledge, Josh contacted the direct supplier and he wasn't trying to undercut. He was just inquiring, and seeing if there's a way that all three parties could work together to make this possible. And man, Corey got wind of it, and I'm telling you, like it wasn't just like, oh, hey, I don't think we should work together. It was like, you're done, and it was a scary time, and I didn't even know what happened. And out, obviously, there's no way I was going to take the blame. I was telling Corey, I said, look, man, this was all on Josh. I understand that I should, as the owner of the company, you know, I take the blame, but you can't punish me for something that I didn't know anything about. And honestly, when it was all said and done, I barely said a thing to Josh about it. I barely, like, if that had happened now, there would be major repercussions for anyone that worked for CatchPro. But man, back then, like, I barely did anything. I mean, if you did that in any other company environment, you'd be fired on the spot.
Yeah. Well, that's what it's like when you. Here's a business lesson for people who are wanting to hire people and involve with people, right? Well, we talked about you're going to make mistakes, you're going to have some bad stuff, but I've made the same mistakes that you've made in that it sounds to me like you tell me if this is true or not. It's like you didn't expect it to go wrong, so you never had like a startup conversation about it. Like if you had somebody who worked for Greenscapes back in the day and you were like, don't swear at the clients, right? Or don't cut the lawn too low, and then they go and swear at the clients that they cut the lawn too low, you're like, okay, no, we had that conversation. But then they say that your employee does something you never expected, right? Like, I mean, I can't even think of anything right now, but something stupid or something unsafe or something like that. It's a really awkward conversation where you're like, I'm not talking about unsafe, like deadly unsafe, but just like, like these sort of grey areas. Like, I don't know how to deal with that sometimes because I never expected it to happen and we never talked about it. And it's so much easier to deal with those issues when you've already thought about them. So one of the things that you do when you get experience is you end up having those conversations at the beginning. Like, you can be like, oh, we had a guy who did this, don't do that. Like, here's a story that's coming to mind. I made this beautiful workbench at our warehouse, right? And then we had a guy who worked for us who was on some fairly thin ice at the time. And one of the things I've been saying for years is if our warehouse doesn't look good, right, the place that we store our equipment and everything, who are we to tell our clients that we can make their property look good? And so we put all this effort into having nice plants and everything in the warehouse. Anyways, this guy, he drew a tiny, in pen, like not pencil, a tiny little penis on my workbench the day after it was finished, right? And it's a workbench, right? It's not a kitchen table. I was like, what the heck? Like, I never expected, and this guy was like 30, it's like, this is something, if there was a 17-year-old apprentice, you'd be like, look, mate, just go clean that up. That's not but you're like, this guy was a crew leader and all that sort of stuff. And it's like, how the heck do you deal with that? Like, I never expected the 30-something-year-old crew leader to do that. He didn't last much longer, to be honest, because there was some other things going on. But, I mean, it sounds like that sort of stuff is what you're talking about there. That's just things you don't expect at all.
Yeah, look, I just think in my actual situation, like, I was legitimately winging starting up a whole new company and a whole new product, introducing a whole new product and introducing a whole new line of products into Australia. So we were just winging it. I'd never done anything in sales before. Certainly never did anything in marketing. Realistically, I don't actually feel very comfortable behind a camera doing any sort of oral speaking. So all of that, like, I always had to man up and do something. And then, Josh, because he was older than me and he had more money than me, and more experience, it was always kind of like that person, hey, Ben, you should do it this way. Hey, mate, you should do it that way. And, like, I'm open to that. And we applied a lot of it. But just whenever I disagreed, it just was awkward to the point where I would kind of lose it. And I'd be like, go back to your day job, dude. Like, I don't, like, I needed to tell him that, we're not always going to do things your way. And I don't care what you think. So, and you know what, ultimately, like I said, I'll never disregard what he did for CatchPro. Who knows where CatchPro would be? But honestly, ever since the door hit him on the ass on the way out, we tripled our revenue every month. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't just like, and obviously we had to spend more money, but you know what I mean? Like, we've never looked back from that. And now, instead of doing things at like 9 or 10 o'clock at night, because he had a day job and I had a day job. Now things get done within business hours. I still work after hours all the time, but it's not things that, I'm not sitting there brainstorming with someone on a new marketing plan at 10 o'clock at night. That stuff, after a while was really starting to wear me down.
Hey, you know how early in the episode I asked you to share the podcast? Well, you didn't share it, did you? Look, I'm not angry. I'm just disappointed. So, look, here's another opportunity then to share it. You can do that right now. Yeah. Just talk about sharing it and how that would help us out. Anyways, if you did share it, then we could be friends. Thank you very much. Anyways, look, I'm just having a laugh. We will eventually have these proper ads here. People who are really helpful. But we're waiting for the right people to come along. In the meantime, you could just share it. Anyways, sorry, I'll stop spamming you. Let's get back into the podcast. All right, Ben, let's change up from the business conversations. I want to talk to you about products, because you sell a whole bunch of stuff. You've got blades, you've got the equipment defender racks, you've got obviously the CatchPro and a whole bunch of other things as well. What do you think is the most underrated product that you're seeing in the industry, whether it's something you sell or it's something somebody else sells, but you're looking at going, that's such a good idea. Why are not more people jumping on that?
Look, in terms of a product that we sell, I'd probably say the equipment defender stuff is probably the most underrated. And now the reason why I say that is everyone that buys the product is very satisfied. But if you look at the amount of volumes that we do, and we do a fair bit, but if you think about the amount of mowing setups and mowing businesses that are out there, people look at it and say, okay, why don't I just go and get my Bunnings hooks and my Aussie straps? And I'm telling you, like, anyone who actually physically touches this product and gets their hands on it, it is the best made product. Like, it is just durable. It's well made. It's well packaged. It's, it just ticks every single box. So I probably think the Equipment Defender line that we sell, I just think anyone that needs to store a whippersnipper or a blower or sprayer or whatever, I think they should have the racks. Now, lots of trailers have like the doors with the drawers, and so I understand if you have that set up, then that's great. That works for that person. But man, if you're rolling around in like a ute or a truck, or you have a trailer, like a flatbed trailer that has no racking solutions, when people say like, go get your Bunnings hooks, or even when I think there might have been someone for a little while that was like welding up towers with little brackets on, and selling them for $200 or something. I'm thinking you can't compare that to this. This is like a superior system. So Equipment Defender for sure, pal.
Well, we've got 4 of them. Let's tell the story. Do you remember the story about you might have forgotten, but you know how you sent us one that we never got? Do you remember that story?
Yeah.
Now I'll tell that on here. So this is good customer service that you get from CatchPro. We bought an Equipment Defender rack, and I think we bought a bunch of things. I can't remember the story, but we bought a bunch of things during the real problem time with like getting stock in with COVID and everything was running behind. We bought an Equipment Defender rack, and we already had a bunch of them. And like everything else rocked up, but this one never rocked up. And then we were trying to like organize stuff and trying to get, and then eventually you just sent us another one at your own cost. We lost where it was and they just sent us another one. So thanks for that customer service, Ben.
Yeah, it's a WA thing, man, but I've had about 4 or 5 of those racks just disappear.
That sucks.
Well, it sucks, and like I've talked to other major suppliers, like I'm talking proper, like huge, not just small businesses. They're like, oh man, 4 or 5, like that's um, that's good compared to us. Like they have like whole pallets go missing, right? And I still think about it, and I just think like someone is stealing my racks. Like it. I don't understand how. Um, so unfortunately, it's one of those things where it actually costs us more to investigate rather than to just either reimburse the client or send them a rack and just cop it as a loss. It's unfortunate. It really pisses me off, to be honest.
I did this quote for a lady yesterday because I wonder if it's the employees of the shipping companies just work out they can get a certain number of these and get away with it. And I did a quote yesterday for this lady. It's a lawn install at the front of her house. She's about to sell a house. This house is like easily $1 million plus, like easily. And our property prices here in WA are not crazy, so it's an expensive house for here. And I walk into a garage. She's got a skip bin out the front. I walk into a garage and it's full of rubbish. Right? Not okay. It's not rubbish. It's actually usable, perfectly working stuff. Right? But she's been cleaning out the house, so she's supposed to be dumping everything in a pile there. And she goes, "Oh, ignore the pile. That's all going in the skip bin." Right? And it's like things you would buy off Gumtree for like $200, $300, $150 here and there. It's like somebody could make $5,000 out of this pile that she's just chucking in the skip bin, right? So anyway, a super wealthy lady. And the job we're quoting, I think we sent about 8-9 grand or something like that to do this job. I'm just painting a picture. So she's telling me this stuff, and anyways, we quoted to do the lawn, and anyway, I'll tell the whole story. It's a little sidetrack, but we did a quote, and I go straight away to do this type of job. What this one aspect of the job, you're looking at like 6.5 grand for us to do it. And she was like, oh, "Okay, that's interesting." And we're talking, got to the end of the thing, and she's basically decided she's going to go with us. And she goes, "The other guy who quoted me $1,500 for the job you're quoting 6.5 grand for." And I said, "Look, this is because with lawn installation in WA, we don't have good soil. You have to do a whole lot of soil prep, take out tons of soil, bring in tons of soil." And so that's what we do. And I said, we just don't cut the corners. If someone's like, "Give us a cheap job," we just won't do it because it just won't survive. And it's like, it's the value for money is in spending all the money or nothing at all. Don't go in the middle. And she was like, "I really appreciate that." And the other thing is, I feel like I can trust you guys because you're telling me that stuff. And then she starts telling me about what she's been going on. She's been getting these tradesmen in, and there's been all these tradesmen working on the inside as they're getting ready to sell this house. And she said, "We keep getting things stolen and we can't pin down who it is." And she said, "We've had 2 electric scooters stolen." And I was like, "What?" And we talked about it, and she was quite reasonable. And she's like, "I think it's these employees, these chief employees it's not the business owners, but these business owners are getting these employees, and the employees work out no one's home, no one's looking, there's 3 or 4 contractors on site. I can get away with stealing this, no one will be able to pin the finger on me." I wonder if that's the sort of thing that's happening. So there's 2 sides of this. One is, hey, people, there's a value to being trustworthy. There's a value to being honest with your conversations. And, the fact that she's probably going to go with us, I don't see it. We sent it last night, so I don't know if we've got to get accepted. But you can go and just be like 4 times more expensive than somebody else, and they'll still go with you because they trust you and they know you're going to do a good job. And secondly, back to what you're saying, there are some people out there who are, just stealing stuff, basically, trying to get away with it.
Tough in my situation. I think at least 1 or 2 of the 4 or 5 incidences we've actually had, like there hasn't been any proof, but there's the racks apparently have been delivered. So, which only means 1 or 2 things: the customer that bought them is lying and saying they haven't received them, or at some point the parcel was dropped off and someone's flogged it from that point. But as a supplier, you, at the end of the day, you kind of just, like I said, I hate it because, Like if we'd forgotten to send something, um, you know, and someone was complaining, I don't lie. Like I would just say, and I've been rewarded. Like I have stuffed up orders, and someone said, "Hey, where's my order?" And I'll look it up and investigate. And if it's an off chance that it's something that I've forgotten to do, 9 times out of 10, I'll probably write back, you know what, I'm so sorry. I've forgotten to do this. And I'm going to express post it to you straight away. And we've actually had people who, because we've done that, express posted it or just done whatever we had to do, we've seen people go and leave great reviews or, come back and buy something, later on or, what have you. So, if I stuff up, I really try hard to just put my name on it, just because, like, man, it just helps me sleep better. Like, I can't stand it, but I tell you, there's people out there, like maybe one of those two people receive those racks. I don't know, but there's someone getting me every day. Every day, someone's at me.
Well, let's not talk about bad clients. I want to talk about bad products. What is Ben van der Giesen's? What do you think is the most overhyped product you're seeing in the market at the moment?
Geez, that's tough, man. Because I mean, look, generally, we wouldn't release something that we thought other people didn't like. Like
Well,
we
I'm not talking about just you. I'm talking about anything you're seeing out there. Someone else is selling, and maybe you don't want to put it on the Facebook post, but somebody posts, and you're like, nah, man, that's rubbish.
Oh man, in terms of an industry product, I, I don't really know. I mean, I think all equipment, like OEM equipment, mowers and everything. I think they all kind of have their place. Um, I mean, I don't even know of any spare parts or anything that I've ever really looked at and said that's a really crappy product. Not in our market. I don't think so. Like, look, I've got my thoughts on products that are in America. Things that we've tried and sort of thought like, mate, this is not even close to what I thought it would be, and I don't even know how they got a business. So one example, I feel comfortable saying this, would be the Cujo shoes. Have you ever heard of Cujo?
I have.
Cujo?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we tried to strike up a deal with Cujo, and we got some samples in, and they've got what they call a yard shoe, and it was pretty cool. I mean, I didn't really like the look of it, like I kind of felt like a bit of a nerd wearing it. Um, but the boot, there's a lot of hype around this boot, and um, from the minute I opened up the box, I just was like whoa, like it looked like a space boot. Um, it kind of felt like a moon boot. Like I just didn't see, and this is a hugely successful company. Um, so, but in the Australian market, um, I don't know. I think everything, nothing comes to mind. Does anything come to mind for you?
I do, but I prepared for this. So
Okay.
I was having a chat with now this is not gonna be good if somebody at this brand wants to sponsor us. But there's a brand called Solo that make very high quality, expensive sprays. Okay. And I definitely believe that they make high quality stuff. I bought one of their 18-liter Solo sprayers. I'll chuck it on the screen. I'm not actually trying to diss the brand here, but I think you just got to be open and honest about stuff sometimes. This sprayer here, if I go into this page, you can see it. There's a few different options. I haven't used all the ones that are on the screen here, but you're looking at $400 to $430 for this sprayer, right? The 417 Li 18 because it's 18 liters, right? Anyways, the thing about this, it sprays fine. It's a battery sprayer. It's got all the bells and whistles. There's two things wrong with it. When you start running low, right, if you turn slightly, you get an airlock. And I don't know if you ever had an airlock in a sprayer, but it just stops pumping. And you've got to like jiggy around and find the perfect angle, and you end up getting to a space. And I've heard multiple people say this, where you end up spraying your last couple of liters with one strap on because the hole is on one side. And you know, when you walk, it swishes back and forth, right? And so it pulls in the air. You get this airlock, right? Now, I cut mine apart and modified the hose and everything to try and fix it as much as possible. Worked a little bit, still happens. Then the last thing is, if you don't put it on one shoulder, right, because the thing's on one side, you can't get all the liquid. You're always left with like 1.5, 2 liters worth left of liquid, unless you're doing this sort of Jimmy sort of thing. And when you're spraying herbicides, you want to be as precise and professional as possible. So for large areas, I thought it'd be amazing because it's 18 liters, 3 liters more than what most others get. Battery powered, you can run a double nozzle on it, like it's powerful enough. There's a lot of things about it that were good. I just really hope they bring out a new model, and I'm not trying to. This product's been out for years. I'm not saying anything that's not already been said on the internet. You know, like people have talked about this, but I still see people recommend that product sometimes, and I'm like, every time I see it, I'm like, man, it's $400. Give me the $190 Sylvan Pro Grade sprayer from Bunnings over that. It's half the price. Yes, you have to pump, but it's just a reliable sprayer. So that's the one that I think is a little overhyped. I've seen it on the internet, and sometimes it's because Solo will do these, you know, they'll sponsor somebody like a YouTube influencer or somebody, and they use it a couple of times, and you don't always get the airlock every time you use it. So I can totally see how some people would use it. They don't have a problem, and then, yeah. Anyway, that's one of my most overhyped products. When was the last time, or do you remember a time where you were using something like you got a demo from somebody, or you went to a dealer or something like that, and you used something you hadn't used before, and you were super impressed? Because I know a lot of the time what happens is like you use a whippy and like, you know, back in the day, still set the standard, and then everybody's sort of caught up, or, you know, Echo did some great stuff, Shindai or whatever. But to be honest, these days, there's not too much difference between that higher end brand. So sometimes you sort of use something like, yeah, it's good, you know, it's not bad, I can't fault it. But when was the last time that you were actually really impressed? Something truly blew you away?
So it wasn't the last time, but I'm just going to give you an example, and it's the Bush Ranger residential battery equipment. So I'm telling you, like, I got invited to a commercial shoot for Bush Ranger, and it was the first time that we ever really made contact with Bush Ranger and Paul Sheehan for that matter. So before then, I knew of them, they knew of me, but we were not on any level at all. But I did get invited to go. And funny story, I actually I believe I wore a Skag shirt. You know, like, what an asshole, right? So anyway, I've gone to this thing and I've seen this battery equipment, and, you know, I'm just standing there with Paul, and we hit it off straight away. He's a great guy, right? So I picked up this gear, and I'm just kind of messing with the multi-tool, like the snipper. And I was like, sheesh, you know, like, and then, you know, started messing a little bit, and I started doing my own little bit of testing and little bits and stuff. And I said, you know, Paul, I said, this stuff is fantastic. You know, can I take some with me? And he said, look, Ben, this is a residential line, and, you know, it's not really going to fit in with what you want to do. And I said, Paul, just give me a day with the stuff. Like, I get it. You know, they don't want to promote it to the contractor, right? But just let me play with it. And I'm telling you, like, I can't remember how long I was in business for after that with Greenscapes, but I ran that equipment in my business every day Like, and I still have the blower that I still have all of it, but like the same blower BJ went and bought, and we had one at the village. Like, so this is a residential spec. So that's just one example. But the last time I was really impressed was actually their commercial range when that whippersnipper. Now, I know people, will have their thoughts on what I'm saying because obviously I market stuff for them, but we really like you won't see me associating my name with something that is actually shit. And I can give you an example, and it probably goes back to your original question of what was something that underperformed. This has just kind of sparked that for me. But the Ego telescopic hedge trimmer, it's got, so anyway, we got to play around with one, and I knew after 10 minutes that this probably wasn't going to be a machine that I could recommend to anyone. And I've stuck by that, and I've given that feedback to Ego. This particular tool is it's telescopic, so that's great. It does have a chainsaw that you can put on, which I think is the only situation that you can use this. But the blade speed is down. It's very heavy and cumbersome, and the layout of the machine is not correct to use in a hedge trimming environment. So that was, now that you say it, that was one piece. But in terms of being blown away, like, people need to go and try that Bush Ranger commercial battery whippersnipper and tell me where I'm wrong, because it is like, it's a game changer.
Well, one of the ways that I was blown away, I've posted about this online before, but we use Mowmaster stuff, and that's big, heavy cylinder mowers. And I've had problems with my back, which is why I've been out of the industry or out of the field. For a couple of years, I wasn't doing any work at all. And the Mowmasters are massive, heavy bits of gear. And anyways, we had a lady working for us who she was struggling with some of the Mowmasters, and I had a great guy, who had bought a smaller Mowmaster, and he had changed the gear ratio so it wasn't so fast. It was a bit more easier to use. And anyways, we were talking, and he was saying, "Oh, I'm not using it much. It's just sitting in my shed. Do you want to buy it?" And I was like, "Do you know what? I wouldn't normally, because it's like a smaller one, and bigger means more efficient and all that sort of stuff. But I thought, look, this might be a good option for this chick who was working with us, and she was a great worker, and we wanted to support her. And anyways, so we bought it secondhand, but it was basically new, and that's now my go-to mower. Now, the lady who was working for us, she had to finish with us due to family reasons. Still, loved having her working with us. It's a shame that she's not with us anymore. But so that mower, I'm like, well, I'll give it a crack. And the smaller, more nimble, I don't think it is more efficient over the course of a single job, but there's just some scenarios where it's just so much easier to whip in around. It's a 22-inch HC split roller, 10-tooth gear for anybody who knows their Mowmaster stuff and is looking into getting, instead of the 9-tooth gears. Anyways, it's just, I was shocked. I thought, look, I'll use it, but I thought this was for, only certain applications. I use it all the time now. So that was last time I was really impressed.
Something else that comes to mind now, just so everyone's clear, like, I've never used this product. I've never put my hands on it, but we do tons of market research, right? And the Toro 30-inch, like, either Time Master or Turf Master, man, I tell you what, like, the feedback on that machine, it blows my mind. Like, I haven't used it, but you see things, and it's like, this machine doesn't cut in the wet. This machine doesn't go up hills. This machine doesn't do long grass. This machine doesn't do this. But next week I'm going out to buy two. Like, You know what I mean? Like, it just blows my mind. And then you do see other businesses that are like, this is the best thing I've ever had. It shaves 10 minutes off every job. It does this, and this. So, look, I just think products, we all have different expectations and we all seem to be getting different results as well. Bad Workwear, the company that, we're essentially ambassadors for, like you have a look on their Facebook and someone will be like, these boots were the most comfortable boots I've ever put on my feet. And then you see other people and they're like, these boots made me go to hospital. Which one is it? Um, so it's really tough out there for the consumer. And there's a lot of emphasis these days on influencers swaying
Yeah.
people's judgment. But honestly, like, I mean, I know the people that I know that are influencing certain products. And, Australia's new to this. America's a little different. If you've got like a mad following, then you just get shit thrown at you. But Australia's a bit different. Like, most of the influencers that we have in Australia in our industry are actual consuming customers. So, like, they've bought those products and they use those products and they just shared their genuine thoughts and then were approached afterward. That's really the model in Australia. And so I think that it's not really, I think it's pretty genuine in Australia, to be honest.
What's the favorite bit of kit, maybe a lawnmower or something like that you've ever used? It might not be because it was absolutely amazing, right? But it might just be for sentimental reasons, like a bit of gear it just never died. It was always there for you, or something that you bought or you had, and it just cut off so much time. And so every time you're using that machine, it's like that's the one, and a special spot in your heart.
I've had a lot of babies in my life, man. Like, the Honda 195, I believe it is. So I would imagine I bought my first one. I reckon it'd be 21 years ago. That's what was new out in the market, the 195. And like, those mowers, they just, like, it was like an extension of my body part. Like, I felt so comfortable with those mowers. Then eventually they brought out the 196, and it was not that different, but it had the metal casing engine. These 195s, they had a plastic case engine. Um,
I'm
and
trying to
they
get a
were,
photo up.
yeah, I'm pretty sure it's the 195. Oh, mate, I got one out here. Um, so
Is
yeah,
that it?
that's it could be the one at the bottom. That could be it. The one at the bottom. Yeah, that one there. That could be it. Actually, no, it's not.
I'm not
So
doing a good job of this. Every
it's a
stream I do, I stuff something up on the. I try and put something up there.
cool, but anyway, it's a 195. So um, I found a guy in Brisbane that restores them, and bought like heaps of them for my business. I mean, this is probably going back 10 years now. Um, but that Honda 195, yeah, and I don't think Honda have ever come close to even matching that machine since. Um, I haven't used Honda in a lot of years now, with the exception of my 195. Um, but the product has just, unfortunately, like everything else, it's just not as good as what it was.
Yeah. Do you think sometimes that's sentimental? It's like sometimes you have a product that blows you away because it is so much better than everything else, and then everything sort of catches up. So maybe the products are good, but you're just not impressed. Is it a little bit of that, or is it literally the companies that are starting to cut corners on cost and they're trying to keep their costs down and they literally don't make things good anymore or as good anymore?
Look, a lot of safety features have compromised the overall feel of a machine. Um, there's so many great features that these machines have now. But, like, I do think, some of these safety features, they're making just everything more bulky. We have emissions and pollution and, all of this other stuff that gets, thrown into the mix. And it's just not like it was 20 years ago. Um, So, lots of people that have started up businesses in the last 5 or 10 years, they probably don't know any different because they, might have been running like a domestic Victor or something like that. Yeah. But all the people that were rocking it 20 years ago, a fantastic machine for like 2 decades was the Shindewa T260. And there's still a shitload of them out there. But like the Shindewa Echo, fantastic brand, but just not what it was. Like the quality is still there, but just the feel and the performance is different.
It's a shame. I would love to go behind the scenes and know what happened to those brands that, like in any industry, where somebody was doing something amazing and then all of a sudden they started cutting corners and stuff like that. Actually, I did watch a little YouTube documentary on the Ford Mustang, because if you're a car lover, I do like cars. I'm not the biggest car lover, but I do like some good cars. And it's like the Ford Mustang was the bee's knees back in this sort of 60s, 70s. And then all of a sudden, sort of 80s and 90s, it became this sort of watered down, I think for them, they were trying to sell it to more people. That was the goal. And so one of the things is in business, if you have the example is if you have a good hot sauce, it's only going to be popular for a small amount of people because not everybody loves hot sauce. And you get a marketing agency and they say, oh, well, if you water down the hot sauce and it's a bit more tolerable, more people will enjoy it. But the opposite happens because it loses the spice. People were getting it because it was spicy. People were getting it because it was hot. And you take away the one thing, the thing that makes it great is also the thing that makes it less popular sometimes. So I wonder if there's a bit of that where they go, oh, well, Shindewa or Ford Mustang or whatever it is, to make it a really good product, we've got to have it be really expensive. To put all the research in, but not many people will buy a X number of dollar whippersnipper, so we lower the cost, you lower the specialness of, the production process, and all of a sudden it's not the same thing anymore.
Look, I think a huge part of what actually happens in really all markets is corporate mergers, corporate takeovers, company takeovers. And, it's just a shame. Like, if you have a look at the green industry as a whole, so many products and companies are just being slutted out. Now, I know that that's a different way to put the term, and it's certainly not very professional, but, like you have a look at, let's take a brand like Xmark. Now, for everyone that doesn't know Xmark is a brand of zero turns in America that were extremely popular in a certain region. And I'm talking a fairly extensive region, not countrywide, just the region. Mm-hmm. And Toro they wanted that market. Like Toro was doing good over here. They're doing all right over there. Okay, we've got a plan over here. But these guys over here, like they're just stomping us. And so, hey, we're going to go in. We're going to give them $100 million to consume that product. We will still build that product, right? They say all the right things at the start. We're going to keep building the product. Still going to say Xmark, rah, rah, rah. But slowly they start taking some of that shit from the Xmark that was really innovative, and you start seeing it on a Toro. And then, the color red that the Xmarks used to be, now it's looking a little bit more of that red from a Toro. And man, it's just happening everywhere. Like, look, I think it's probably great for some innovative companies. Like you look at a company like Spartan Mowers, for example. Now that dude, he had his own mowers before, but essentially the story is that he designed the Spartan mower in his garage. Now he just sold that company for 400 million. Like,
Crazy.
that's that American dream that they talk of. So there's positives and negatives to it all, but exactly the same thing with CatchPro, man. When I came out with CatchPro, like, I was convinced that I needed a distributor. Now, everyone's heard of GA products before.
Yep.
GA is the spare parts division, Power Up Lawn Care, like Roy Gripsky and Sons. And I went through all that process, and they literally just sat Vicky and I down at a table, and they said, "Like, guys, we don't actually think this is good for your product." So, like, they were knocking it back, they wouldn't take it, but they were, and I was like furious, because I'm like, I had so much passion, and I believed, and I believed that, like, they were giving me numbers like, say, 6,000 a year, right? And at the time, we might have been selling 300 catches.
Yeah.
And they're like, "But Ben, like, you won't have it won't have the same flavor. You won't have the same control. You won't have, and who knows if they're right or not." But it was one of those things where they had kind of sat me down and sort of said, you know, "You're probably better off keeping your own spin on it." And they believed enough in, not even me, just CatchPro, that and enough to endorse it to their own dealer network for nothing, for no money. So it's funny how these things work.
That's awesome. So they've been pretty good. Let's change the subject a little bit. Tell me some of the worst clients you've ever had to deal with the CatchPro, selling the CatchPro. I know that early days you're basically selling it out of your garage sometimes. Do you have any less than desirable people rock up to your house, or do you have any stories like that?
Um, Not really, not really like that. Like, most people, we don't really do pickup now. We will do pickup if someone's like super adamant, but like, we've got a dealer down the road, and so if someone, just for some reason, some people just want to meet me, right? So, yeah, sure, come on down, and but like, one type of customer, like the customer that's like, "Oh, can I just come and have a look at one?" And it's like, nah, bro. Like, if you want to go and have a look at one, instead of coming here, you can go 10 minutes that way, and you can look at one, you can touch one, you probably can't use one, but you can drive around with one. Um, so the people that want to come here and window shop is just like a straight up, like, nah. Because we have all sorts of things lying around here that aren't released, like secretive stuff.
Yep.
So it's just not appropriate. Um,
And you got BJ's underwear somewhere around there as well, and you got some compromising photos of him somewhere, I'm sure.
no, that's all in his.
All right, man. So people have been pretty good to you then.
People have been really good. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, we've had big time run-ins with people who, like, just, they swear to God that we've sent them the wrong thing. Like, um, and they're putting their bracket on upside down, backwards, or like doing things that we like don't even know what they're doing. Um, and like, we we don't we don't judge that customer, because it's not a household product. Like, if you've never really seen one before, you really do need a heads up. So, but it's only when they're adamant, like, they're like going online, like, CatchPro sent me the wrong thing twice, or you know what I mean? Like, I've had people that they're like, "You sent me the wrong bracket, and I've been so busy. I've said to Vicky, that email, send him this bracket, express it." The next day, they've got the thing, and they're like, "Dude, you sent me the same bracket. It's the fucking wrong one." So, so, so when I've got the time, then usually that gets my attention. I'm like, dude, you had the right bracket the whole time. Like, you know? So, uh, look, mate, that's things that I face every single day. In terms of bad customers, it seriously, everyone is pretty good. I did have someone buy a Pro Shield, and they left me like the worst voicemail. It was his wife that left the voicemail. She's like, "This is a piece of shit," like, oh, and I was like, oh my gosh, So anyway, I called them, and the product hadn't actually failed. I was trying to ask her, like, sorry, what's wrong with the product? What's going on here? And she said, oh, we read the ad and it said it saves money and it's safer and it saves time. And we've got a prop. So my husband put it on, he bought it, he put it on, he's mowed a lawn, and the property manager is ringing up saying, you have to come and clean up all your grass clippings. And I was like, look, I knew exactly what had happened, right? He's thought it was a mulch kit. He's put the flap down. He's gone gun-ho over this Rankaz lawn, and he's left a mess, and he's just bailed. And the property manager was unhappy, and they weren't getting paid. They had to clean it up. But that's not CatchPro's problem. Like, the product doesn't say that it's going to magically make grass clippings disappear. This is the Pro Shield, not the CatchPro.
Yeah.
So it's really tough,
Well, what the Pro Shield's for, we've got the prototype, don't we? Was that the prototype you sent us? Or a prototype?
Yeah, we probably got 3 units out there that aren't quite. So, yeah, like the whole concept is there, but it wasn't what we went to market with.
Well, it's still working. Yeah, the problem with that is I know now that you've got some plastic bolts on, so that if somebody drives into something, it doesn't bend the actual thing. Ours is bent. It's been run into a lot of different things. It's formally straight, is what I would say. And one of the bolts. I know there's a lot of things that you've fixed and repaired, but one of the bolts doesn't quite grip onto the actual mechanism anymore. I've already had it for over a year.
Yeah, probably longer. We've had the product released for about a year now, or over a year. So that might be going back a while. That one.
So sometimes you just got to give it a little bit of a wiggle to make it work. It's definitely stuff that you would have worked out by now. But it's the Pro Shield. What it's for is for saving windows, really. And I do find that when you're cutting, like if you had the normal side shoot on your mower that you got, I mean, it extends the width of the mower out quite a lot, which is annoying if you're trying to get through a space, especially on a stand-on mower, because you can't reach down and grab it. And like on a sit-down mower, you can usually reach down, grab it, pick it up with your hand, drive through a small door. So it shortens your space like that, and it's just a barrier so that if you're mowing next to the road, you're not throwing everything out into the road and you don't have to blow down 90% of your clippings again. And if you're mowing next to windows, it's protecting your windows. That's really what it's for. It's not supposed to be a mulch kit.
No, absolutely. And, I don't even feel comfortable using a mower without one. Like, I can't believe how many things that I use now that, I just look back and I just think, like, I don't know how I worked for so many years without some of this stuff. Like, some of this stuff I feel naked without. And so, like I said, not everything that we sell or what other people sell is for everyone, but there probably is at least something for everyone. Like, I think a household name in the industry now, like a whipper gripper, like, it just makes so much sense in so many different ways. It's the one product that is a true game changer for every operator.
Well, with the Pro Shield, here's a bit of a plug for you in a sense, is that the only time I've been gardening since I was 15, and I've been quite good on the whippy. Found it quite easy. Usually pretty, I take my time. I don't try and rush jobs. So in my, close to 15 years of being a gardener, I have only ever broken one window. And that was when I was using a ride-on lawnmower, and there was a hedge, and behind the hedge, so the hedge was literally covering up some windows. So I didn't really think, there's a window there. I thought there's a hedge there, and there was a twig on the lawn, like, maybe sort of finger thick, but I was pretty close to the hedge, and I was like, the mower will run over that fine. I'll just blast it to the garden bed, no worries. And I just blasted it, and one of the sticks just went straight through where the hedge was and broke the window. And it's like, this is 5 years ago, before the Pro Shield even existed, or I'd even heard about you or the business. And it's like, that's the only time I've ever broken a window. And the cost of the window would have been basically the cost of, pretty similar, maybe a little bit less, but not that much difference to actually just buying a Pro Shield. And the thing about the Pro Shield is that because you can adjust exactly how high it is, which is what I really like about it, because I know that some of the more manual ones, not to talk about brands or anything like that, because I don't want to diss anybody, but not that I've used one, but what I've seen online is it's like open or shut. Is that right? You don't really have that fine finesse where you can just tap the button and open it to pretty much wherever you want. Is that right?
Yeah, look, they all have their positives and negatives, and like I don't mind talking about other brands and being truthful about ours as well, but essentially they all do have their positives and negatives, and some can be operated at any position. Now, obviously, what is great about that is that you really are, so they're called operated controlled discharge chutes. OCDC is what they're called. Now, if you've got a unit that can open and close wherever you want it, you truly are controlling those clippings to where you want to go. The ones that are open and closed, typically, we carry one, the advanced chute system. The positives of it. It's a very durable system, and the drawback of it is, it is either open or closed. The Pro Shield, the Grass Flap, they're the only other ones that really come to mind in our market. They can be operated at any position, but the drawback of it is that the operator is probably going to hit something one day with it, because you have this out of the machine, and like you can have it open this much, and you can hit a tree root like this. Positives and negatives, and it just is the way that it is.
Well, the thing that I still find about it is it's a bit more like what you get with your standard discharge sort of chute that you get, the rubber one that you get on the side of the mower, in that it still opens up and discharges things out, but there is a little bit of extra protection. So with the Pro Shield, you can lower it down to say like a 45-degree angle, and you are covering a lot of the area that's going to throw up and break a window if you hit something, but you're still getting a fairly even discharge. When you shut it all the way, you do get a little line if you cover a lot of turf where it sort of hits the shield and just drops.
That's right.
But if you're trying to protect the window, it's like just you don't have to worry about that, because you just cover it up for a little bit, and it'll be a tiny little line, and you might be able to blow that down later because you can open it up everywhere else where the windows aren't. You don't have to go one or the other. So. Anyways, I just like that about it. Now, we're at an hour and a half, and we talked about, when we were going to do this podcast, about talking about the controversial issues. And I did want to talk about some of the things that we disagree on. Have you got enough time for that? Or you got to go?
Yep.
You got time, sweet. So, this is one of the things that I like about you, Ben, is you're not a pushover, but you're also quite respectful to people that you disagree with. And that's one of the things online, and we get along. We've met in person once. You came to one of my events in Brisbane, and we get along really, really well. Not that we see each other 24/7 or anything, because we're literally as far away pretty much in the country as we could possibly be geographically. But what I love about what you and BJ are doing is it doesn't matter whether or not we agree on every single issue. It's like we're out there trying to help people run a good business, and there's no such thing as the only way to run a business. And so it just gives people lots of different flavors. And there's some people on the internet, and they'll say something like, I can't understand how anybody could run a business and catch their grass clippings. Mulching's the only way. Everybody else is stupid. Or anybody who charges less than this amount is an idiot. How the hell could you think you could run a successful? You're a cowboy, and it just becomes these ultimatums, and the arguments get blown out of proportion. Or you see some people, and there's been a lot of fun about cylinder mowers, and I think some people are not understanding the joke of it, or some people are taking it a little bit like, oh, it's getting a bit much now. But it's like some people will say, if you're not using a cylinder mower, you're a cowboy. Now, I know some people have said that and they're joking, and people haven't taken it that way. And then there's other people who are like, cylinder mowers are completely useless, and you get these extremes. So let's go into some of these things, and we'll talk about, we can't talk about it forever, which is maybe we need to do another episode one day about this. I'm sure we'll have you on 75,000 times in the next, 100 years this podcast is going for.
Just got to see how well the ratings go first.
Who cares about the ratings, mate?
So if nobody sees me back on here, that means we shit the bed with
it. Yeah. I think people will love it, man. It's just a shame about this audio stuff, because I've wanted to laugh and have a good time. And look, we got to work this out. I'm going to send a message to I'm going to put at the beginning of this podcast, I'll put a little disclaimer onto why we're not laughing at each other's jokes and talking over the top of each other. But it's, I think we would be having a lot more, you can see my facial expressions. We'd be having a lot more fun audibly as well if we didn't have this issue. Anyways, let's get into the controversial stuff. The first thing is, for the last couple of years, I've been trying to say, people, you got to raise your prices, you got to charge more. And you've made a response, and let me talk about how I understand what you think on pricing, and then you tell me what you disagree with me on. We're not trying to start an argument here. I don't think it could ever go that way, because we both are very attractive men who like each other a lot. See, the jokes don't work when you can't laugh over each other, doesn't it?
Well, sorry, yeah. I probably should have made a little bit of sound there, but I was actually laughing. So
you can see it on YouTube, but it's like, man.
For anyone that's listening, jump on YouTube, go to his channel, and then you'll get the full experience.
You will. Well, at least 80% of the experience. So, pricing, I've been saying, look, $100 an hour is what most people should be charging. I don't try and say this is what you should be charging, and anybody else who doesn't charge is just an idiot, because I understand that everyone's got different costs and different goals in life and everything like that. But one of the things that you've been saying is you feel concerned sometimes that if people raise their price too much, they're going to miss out on maybe some bigger jobs, or they price themselves out of the market. Is that sort of, am I understanding what you're getting at?
Look, Luke, there's a couple of factors there. So for someone that's been in the industry for, 21, I'm just going to say 20 years, because I'm not cutting anymore. This next season coming up would technically, I think, have been my 21st season. Mm-hmm. But, I really cut my teeth in the industry, and, look, I was a young fella, and, I charged accordingly, and all of this talk now, like, I deal with a lot of contractors, right? And it could be gyms contractors, Fox people, it could be independents, it could be old people, it could be, blue collar, white collar. It doesn't matter what category you come from. We experience the same thing, and, at the end of the day, you don't go to TAFE, you don't go to university, you go down to a mower shop, you buy your equipment, you register your business, and you're a mowing contractor. Now, what my issue is that I've cut my teeth in this industry for so long and I've worked so hard. Why does some dude that just got his fucking superannuation and gone out and blown, 20 whatever grand on a mowing business, why does he get to charge the same amount as me when he can't, he can't even snip in the field that I'm in? You know what I mean? That's my issue. So my issue is that I know what you're saying, and I don't actually disagree to the people that it's actually relative to, but you talk about bringing the tide up to rise all the ships, and what I am really seeing there is now I have to be competitive with some cowboy. Now, when I use the term cowboy,
Yeah.
he might have the maddest uniform on and the maddest clothes and all of this stuff, but he can't do the same job that I can do. Like he can't even wire up his whippersnipper. He's spilling fuel on someone's grass. All of that stuff. Like that's probably what I mean by this conversation. And like my advice is for people out there that are trying to learn is to listen to a Luke Smith, is to listen to us Skull Sessions, and to listen to the other people out there that are giving the info, and you take the nuggets of gold that from every little bit. So that's really my
So you're basically saying that you've got guys out there who have been in it for 2 weeks, and it doesn't seem right that they're going to come out and charge the same as someone who's been around for 20 years.
Look, that's not exactly what I'm saying, because if that person is capable of providing the same quality job, man, that he's got to get paid, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if they don't know what they're doing and they can't offer the same quality of service, like I just don't understand why they should be able to do, charge those same prices. And mate, it is happening. People get on LMCA, they just started a business or they're thinking about starting a business. They join a group like LMCA and they're like, oh hell yeah, we can make $100.
Yes. Okay.
Let's go and I'm just going to go get me Vector.
Yeah.
Right? And I just think, look, I think it's great if that business is a quality business, but the people that are not rocking up on time, going down the pub for 3 hours at lunch, like I don't want to see them taking any of my business from me.
And so you're sort of feeling like these guys because they're not providing a very good quality of service, like being disorganized, not doing as good a job as you could, especially with the finer detail stuff. If they go charge those prices, maybe they're going to make the clients feel like, oh, this is a rip-off price, the industry is a rip-off, and then they just don't even consider the more professional businesses. Is that sort of an angle that's coming at?
Once again, not necessarily. I just think it creates unnecessary competition. Right. So, someone might be looking to get an acreage mow, and they got 1 acre. And a business like Greenscape Solutions might be charging 110 or 120 an acre, right?
Yep.
For example. And we might have a mower that can mow that in like 25 minutes. Mm-hmm. And then you've got another guy who's sort of, got like a machine that costs $10,000 less, and he's wanting to charge the same amount. So then the customer has a choice to make. Like they're both pretty much charging the same amount. Who had the best shirt on, who had the, like they just, like I just think it's creating unnecessary competition. Um, there is so many times where, let's say, that underqualified person, like if they don't have the information that everyone's been giving, they might be like, yeah, I'll do it for 60. And automatically the customer's like, whoa, like it's, some people would probably say like, yeah, you can do it for 60. But like the level that we were at, that's a red flag. And people are like, look, I know that's cheaper, but I think we just feel a little bit more comfortable. Like this is more of the price that we're thinking of. So I just think it creates unnecessary competition if you've just got everyone charging that same price, and you're potentially losing work to someone who shouldn't even be playing in the same field as you.
Let's move on to two-man teams. I put out a video a while ago. Now, I've got to take responsibility for, and this is one of the reasons why I made the podcast. Also, I've got to give you credit. You did say, like, a good year ago, you were like, you should do a podcast, And you said, and I was like, nah, man, I'm too busy. I can't do a podcast. But, I came around to it eventually. But one of the things that was actually one of the final straws of this was I've been putting out videos. I've been trying to help people for a long time on these Facebook groups, and I put out a video on two-man teams. And the thing I did wrong was I tried to make it short because nobody watches 10-minute long videos on Facebook, right? So I was trying to be like, let's keep it to 4 minutes. And I think I came out of the gate too strong, and people watched the first 30 seconds to a minute, made their mind up, and then all the qualifying information I left was at the last 30 seconds of the video. But I made a video that basically said two-man teams are inefficient and caused a bit of controversy. I've heard your thoughts on it because you talked extensively with BJ on this subject, right? And I actually pretty much agree with everything you've said as well. But what are your thoughts on it?
Well, no. So look, your initial video, what I took back from it, I think your body language is a little bit different compared to other videos. And I think you may have even been a culprit of your opening line in this segment. And, what I remember seeing is two-man teams are rubbish. And it was like, right. And that got my attention. I watched the whole thing, man, straight up. Like I had like my kid, I was playing with my kids, and I'm like, oh, shut up. I'm trying to listen to this. And like you can, it would be typically like if someone else was doing the video, I'd probably typically just scroll past it, right?
Yeah.
But like I respect you a lot, and I think everything that you do say is credible. And that's why I'm so fascinated by it, because I think what you're saying is credible, what I believe I'm saying is credible, but they're just so different. And I think that's what the beauty of it is other people can listen to this and they can just take what applies to them. But look, mate, two-man teams are the most common throughout our whole business model. And I didn't have as much issue with what you were saying compared to what was in the comments. And there's particular people in there, I won't name them, but it just was fucking ass backwards. Like you could send two guys out doing the same run and it's going to be more cost effective and efficient than having those two people together. Well, did anyone fail to actually realize that means you're going to have an extra whippersnipper, you're going to have an extra trailer, extra, car. And then I get accused of, oh, you're thinking short term, you're not thinking long term. Well, if you think long term, you got to fucking turn that machine over eventually. The car could break down. There's just so many variables that, like,
it does get complicated. It gets complicated. Yeah. Here's the real point I was trying to get at, and everybody can do that math for themselves. What you're talking about there, where it's like, you should only ever have one-man teams, or you should only ever have two-man teams. That's not really what I was trying to say, but I did put a bit of a clickbaity title on it. I think I was a bit grumpy that day, to be honest, as well. So, anyways, but what I was trying to say is I've had conversations with some guys, and they hire somebody and it doesn't work out, and they don't realize that you have this extra travel time, and you do have other things that go wrong. And what happened is maybe their pricing was okay for one person, but they chuck somebody else on, and they're just not quite as fast as they expected. And what I should have said is toned it down a little bit and said, look, guys, here's something to watch out for with two-man teams. They can be rubbish in this specific way, in that if you don't charge for your second guy properly, you end up just not making any money off it. And I think a lot of guys, they put a second guy on, they don't really get anywhere, and they go, screw this, and then they don't hire anybody again, and then they get exhausted, and they put somebody on, and they go through the cycle of just going in and out.
Like, all of your maths worked out beautifully. It was correct. What the problem is with some of these issues is just all the different variables, so the maths lines up and the numbers line up, but let's face it, if you've got two dipshits working in one vehicle, you can have another mad dude working in another vehicle that like, I say it every day, like, people are like, hey man, when are you going to put someone on with CatchPro? And I'm like, well, I do the work, or I'm capable of doing the work of at least 3 men a day. So, like, I just don't need to. And there's just all of those variables, pal. That was my sort of thinking behind it. But there's a lot of good nuggets in there, bro. And I don't think you need to justify yourself to me or any of your listeners on the podcast either.
I think one day I will do a proper, like, good 45 minutes on what the efficiencies between different teams are. And for those who know, for those who don't know, is we've been timing every single job that we've done for like 4 years. And it's well over 10,000 jobs. And it's just by using the software, the clock in and clock out jobs. And so we've already done all this maths in our own business, and there were some things that surprised me. And so I'll do a full video on it one day, and then people can really understand and go, oh, okay, this is exactly what's coming across. But anyways, let's talk. One of the things I think would be interesting to hear is, we've heard your opinion on mulch versus catch. You're the CatchPro guy, so let's not talk about that too much more, because I mean, you've got a full episode on that on the Skull Sessions, don't you?
Yeah, that was an interactive episode where we read directly from a thread to just get an understanding of what essentially the contractor community thinks. It's such a grey area.
Why don't you tell me your opinion in a nutshell? Because I want to ask you what what your real thinking is on cylinder mowers after this, because I don't think we've talked as much on that.
Look, my thinking on the mulch versus catch is that, look, I think if you're mowing a residential property, like 800 squares, 600 squares, 400 squares, whatever it is, right? I think 9 times out of 10, when you get that call, the customer is looking for a service where you whip a snip, you blow down, and you mow the lawn, and you take the grass clippings away. Now, I understand in certain markets, say Sydney, near the city or whatever, like, I'm learning that, businesses, they don't operate the same way. But, like, I think when we see comments, mulching is almost as good as catching, or you can barely tell the difference, they're just red flags to me that you're not offering a full service. Now, you got people like Kyle, with a 72-inch monster stand-on that's mowing like acres upon acres, saying catching is a scam. I mean, I'm Benny Hoover, right? If someone with a 72-inch machine said, hey, I've got a 7-acre property that I need to cut, I'm thinking about buying a CatchPro, I wouldn't sell him one. Like, I'm not an idiot. So, I just, those types of things, look, we'll never know. There is no right answer either. But one thing I do know is that I've done a shitload of testing, not just in my time with CatchPro. This is years upon years of genuine organic testing. And one thing that I found is, when you're at a client's place, this actually happened when I was building the CatchPro, right? You're at a client's place and you're side throwing or you're mulching. and you blow down and you blow all the little bits of grass and leaves that you can still see, and you walk away and you go, this looks pretty damn good, right? And that's that. You don't get to see it again for a week or two, maybe 3 or 4. Now you go back to your own place, and I spend a lot of time in my yard. Sometimes I just lay down on the grass and have a nap, right? Sometimes I'm playing when my kids were little, fucking tea sets and doing all this shit, and I'm in my lawn. And when you catch it, you can be on the lawn. When you are mulching it or you're side throwing, you're doing whatever it is, you clean it up, you go inside, you take a shower, and you're like, yeah, it was all right. Then you go and sit on the lawn, whether it's that day, next day, whatever, and you've got shit all over you. Like, it's not the same service. So, look, business is business. I'm not really trying to convert anyone, but what I am trying to say, if you have a need, if you have a client that's requesting for catching, here's a great solution for you. You can do that.
CatchPro.
Buy a CatchPro.
Well, let's talk about cylinder mowers. And I think you've got a. There's been all this controversy, and I saw you write a comment, and I think you've got the nail. You've hit the nail on the head with where I come from in my position too, because there's a lot of guys over east who say you can't use cylinder mowers, it doesn't work, it's this, it's that, it's whatever. But I think you see there's an opportunity there, right?
Man, I love cylinder mowing. I got a cousin who's a bit younger than me, and I used to live down the street for him in a rental, and they bought like not their family home, but it was like a relative of family who always had a cylinder mower, and they bought the property with the cylinder mower, and like we'd go up there and have drinks and that, and man, like I wanted to sleep on this dude's grass, like it was just sexy as. Like I always say, still, there's nothing sexier than a push mode lawn. But there is just nothing sexier than a cylinder mode lawn. Like that is like proper. So to your actual question, yeah, I see the same comments. Hey man, no one's messing with cylinder mowers over here. And
another delivery. We'll pause and come back.
Sorry, mate. I'm not helping him anymore. I hate that guy, eh?
I'm gonna put that in I'm gonna leave that in the podcast.
Yeah, he loves Vicky, but he doesn't like me.
Well, do you think he's trying to, swing on?
No, I don't.
Okay. So you're saying there's look, I'll cut in and restart the conversation because I think I understand how some people will be like, oh, there's a huge investment with a cylinder mower because a commercial cylinder mower is thousands and thousands. Like, a Mowmaster is 6,000, 7,000, 8,000, depending how big you go, right? But I just think, like when you talk about the CatchPro, right, and adding that on to your mower, it's the same sort of thing. Like those little things, like having a catcher that just slightly increases maybe your offering as a whole, and doing things like that. It just puts you in a different league, and they're the sorts of things that some clients, they just love that sort of stuff. And I think there's a great opportunity there for people over east who see other people going, I know you can't do cylinder mowing, and being like, I'm going to do cylinder mowing and I'm going to charge for it. And if you buy a $7,000 Mowmaster, right, and I'm not sponsored by Mowmaster yet. Mowmaster, come on, jump on board. But no, I'm not sponsored by Mowmaster. But look, if you buy a $7,000 cylinder mower, even you finance it, right? Like you just have a space for it on your trailer. Let's say you only use it once a week. Delivery guys back.
Fucking idiot.
I'm going to leave that in too. All right. I'm just saying, I think there's a great opportunity for cylinder mowers. I think that's probably telling us it's time to wrap up soon, doesn't it? Because we're getting close.
Well, I'm sort of not really expecting anyone else. But look, I think there's an incredible opportunity here. And look, a cylinder mower is not going to work in an everyday model. It's a specialized, service, and there are, like I want to use a cylinder mower at my home, but like my property is not set up for it. Like it's not like super flat. I've got all these different types of grasses. They are what those types of things is what contractors are facing when they say this is just not possible for me. But I mean, you drive anywhere in Brisbane and anywhere on the East Coast, and there's a lot of opportunity out there. And let's just say if you were in Brisbane doing it and you were advertising that as a service, it's a gold mine like thing. You got to, potentially scalp the whole property. You got to do all of these things first. And if you can come up with a business model and you can present it to that customer like, okay, we've got to do this, or it's probably not gonna from now until it might be 9 months away. You might not start seeing results, but eventually you're gonna have the sexiest lawn on the street, maybe even the suburb. That's the type of thing that type of opportunity that I see there.
And what I was getting back with the pricing before your best friend knocked on the door again was that $7,000 as a loan, right? And I would look. Here's a different subject for another day, but I think financing is a really powerful tool if you know how to do it. And if you haven't financed anything before, having a history of it is good. And something like a MowMaster for $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 or whatever size it is, $8,000, it's not a risk because at the end of the day, what's that going to be? $40 a week or something over and my MowMasters, I've got one that's 8 years old and it's only ever had a spring break on it, right? Like they do properly last, right? And I'm not talking about if you treat it right, they last. If you abuse it, it still lasts, right? That's how good they are, But what I'm getting at is if it's let's say it's $50 a week. I don't know what the maths is, but let's say it's $50 a week. Like, and then you just every job you quote, you say, hey, we also offer cylinder mowing. It's going to be a bigger expense. Let me know if you're interested. At some point, someone's going to say yes. And how many jobs do you need a week to pay you $50 just to start out with? What, let's say two jobs, they're happy to pay an extra 20 something bucks, and then your foot's in the door, and you pay it off your MowMaster for free, and then word of mouth starts going around. And what I'd say, guys, if somebody over east is not going to do it, then one day I will come over and I'll just do it myself, all right? Because I think there's such a good market there. We'll get Silverstone gardening over east one day, and then we'll just start doing all the cylinder mowing stuff. Otherwise, somebody jump on there before me.
Luke, I also just think as well, people just see it or hear the concept and they just put it in the too hard pile. Like,
Sure.
There's businesses out there that like refuse to do hedge trimming. There's businesses out there that refuse to do hand weeding, and it's when we're talking about being as efficient as possible and all of this stuff, a rotary mower really just ticks the box. And also, I think it's something that you have to have a passion for, like cylinder mowing. I don't think you have to have a passion for hedge trimming and all of those things, but it certainly helps, right? And I think it's very similar to cylinder mowing. Like, you have to want to be interested in it. You have to want to sort of do that service and feel very proud afterwards. And, look, I'm not saying that you could be on the East Coast and buy a cylinder mower and immediately, double your revenue, because that's not going to happen.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But what I am saying is that I do believe it's a quality service. I do believe that there is a market over here for it. And I think you could, if you were doing it, you'd probably be like one of the pioneers of the whole concept. Whereas, over, on the West side, it's kind of like a normal thing.
It is. I think, there are still contractors that only do rotary mowing over here, and they're targeting a different type of client. But we here, like at Silverstone Gardening, we don't use the cylinder mower at every job because it's not suitable for every job. And we understand that when people say that. And it's like, that's a bit of the joke that I think people don't understand. In the real world, you do have higher end clients who want it and they have the money. Like I talked to you before about that lawn install job we were talking about, where it's like, hey, somebody else quoted $1,500, which is like the turf. It barely covers the cost of the turf. They're clearly just literally ripping out the lowest amount of soil possible and throwing some lawn on top. The client didn't want that. They're happy. Well, yeah. Again, I haven't seen it accepted yet, but we only sent it last night. But it sounded like they were happy with $6,500 for the same sort of job. There are people out there who will pay for the cylinder mower stuff, and if you keep doing a good job, you'll gain momentum. You'll get word of mouth over time, and yeah, I think there's an opportunity there. And so I hope that there's somebody out there who thinks, I'm going to give that a crack. I'm going to try that because that could be a great opportunity for me to differentiate myself, just like buying a CatchPro or just like all that other stuff that you can do in your business. But anyway, Ben, mate, we're around 2 hours. And
Yeah, I was going to blindside you and ask you something.
Oh, yeah, go for it.
So the topic, it's kind of not really that different to like all this Automower talk, right?
Yeah.
There's positives and negatives to all of it. There's a lot of chitter chatter. But there's opportunities everywhere, and it's not going to be for everyone. I think the point of some of this, I'm going to call it niche stuff, even though it's not niche in WA, right? But the beauty about it is that it is niche. Like say the CatchPro, for example, the beauty about it is that like it is new and it does make you different. Now, obviously, as time goes on, like if every contractor bought a CatchPro, then we're talking about something different.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? Like we are seeing all of these different new concepts coming in now. Some of them make sense more than others, but like I think it's good for Australia as an industry as a whole, to see some innovative stuff because we were typically a decade behind any other country, right?
Mm.
Now we're not even a year or two behind. Mm-hmm. Certainly not, maybe a year.
Yeah.
But what's your sort of? I know it's your show, bro.
No, go for it.
Like, what's your thought on the Automower stuff? Because I haven't really heard a lot of content from you about it.
No, well, I do want to get some of the guys from those brands on. So I actually have got a fairly long history / understanding of Automowers because I believe the first person to bring in Ambrosio to the country, well, the Ambrosio guy is in WA. And I think the first dealer to stock Ambrosio is the dealer that I've been using the most for my mowers and stuff. And I get along with that guy really well. And he went from cylinder mowing his lawn to the Automower on his lawn. And I know that people will say that the Automower just gives the best cut possible. It just doesn't. Like he still has, like, don't get me wrong, we're talking about small margins here. I do believe that no one disagrees with this, but a rotary mowed lawn that's like once a fortnight and it's getting overgrown and you're just cutting it back and the goal is to keep it neat and tidy. There's a big difference between that, especially when you start talking about just dumping the clippings on the surface or something like that. Like there's a big difference between that and a average or just a general Automower job, right? I think the Automower is better in that scenario, but the cylinder mower job, it just... There's something about which you guys may not understand is that when you have a really heavy cylinder mower, it's such a true, flat, clean, like job. It's just in its own class. And so for the general population, I do think that the Automower could fill that request, but I actually think I don't think it's suitable in every scenario. And I think as well, it's not as good as what some people hype it up to be.
Yeah, so I agree with you. Like I've seen the photos and I see the videos of, and it is true. Like the Automower, it keeps an area looking pretty damn sexy all the time, right?
Yeah.
Now, I don't think anyone is out there ever comparing it to a cylinder mower. I think that would be nonsense. I think you can quite easily compare it to a rotary mower. And I think you'll find that like the auto mower will keep an area looking tidy all the time,
Mm.
without fail. I think kind of what I mean, this is, look, I know that we've probably got some new listeners here with CatchPro and Ben and all this stuff, but like I think what my issue is, like, I just don't love contractors setting them up and running a business model that way. Um, I just think where I think auto mowers actually really fit in is like, like the 50 and 60 year olds that just, they come out together and they mow their lawn on a Wednesday and, time goes on, maybe they're getting a little bit older. Hey, it might be time to get an auto mower. Or, the businessman or woman that is, they have to, fly to Sydney every week for, however many days and they just are only home on the weekends. I think really that is probably going to be the controlling market. Um, I heard some interesting analytics, and that's
Cool.
why I was going to say before, whenever you get an auto mower guest on, I was going to say, are you going to make them take a lie detector test before they go on?
Ooh,
Uh,
so tell me about this story. I like this.
well, we have. Look, I don't follow this whole concept that closely. I see it. Um, I recognize it, but like I've already said publicly that I'm not. I don't understand how Catch Pro is really ever going to make any money off this concept. So I don't know. Like, so I'm not very invested in it, right? Um, I've heard reps and stuff publicly say like, oh, this is typical because it's one day going to make Catch Pro redundant. Um, that's also nonsense because if you have a look at products that we sell for mowers, it's like five. We got stuff for trailers, whippersnippers. Like everyone's always going to need to whippersnip their lawn, right?
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, I had some interesting analytics. Look, I don't know if it's gospel, but apparently the biggest dealer in Australia, for one of the brands, one of the leading brands, has 4 stores in Australia and they have a dedicated team of installers and backup servicing, rah, rah, rah. So they're really set up to do this, right? Apparently, their record sales for last year was 67 mowers.
Right.
So
25 million people in the country.
yeah, so what that tells me, when I do my market research, is that it's obviously it's early days, but there's people out there making out that like everyone on their
Yeah.
street auto mower. There's people out there that are saying certain things, and I think from the outside looking in, like it just looks very different to what it actually is. And from a contractor's point of view as well, like I get it if you're making money off a subscription, but like man, who wants to go to like 20 lawns a day and just whip a snip? Like
Yeah.
that, like to me it'd be like mowing is like one of the awesome parts of it because like it's like the finish, like you get to see what you've done. And I don't know if I'm old school in that respect, but um
Well, when I was at here's some stories that I've got because I think auto mowers are a long way off being where the contractor is. So there are, I mean, and you're saying this as well. There are some scenarios where it's like, yeah, the auto mower is the best scenario for you. Someone who's like, I was thinking about a client that we used to work for who's probably 60 something, and they've got about 2 acres and they're getting a bit older, and we go help them out with some stuff every now and then. And I was like, auto mower, perfect for you if you can afford it, because you've got a ride on, you spend all this time to ride on, but you're slowing down, so you want to gain some time somewhere in your garden. Great story. But I was at Ben Sim's house, and Ben's got a Husqvarna one that he's using to mow some back parts of his property. They sponsored him to use it. He loves it because it's like it just makes he doesn't have to worry about that section of his lawn. And he's got a big property. He's got a lot going on, right? But when we were over there, We were just chatting, and he got a notification on his phone, and it just got stuck on a branch. It's just things like that. And yeah, we just went and we just got it off, and it was like, I think it's like the right up. It's a big one. It's a big expensive one. It's not like a cheapo, and it's a good brand, a reputable brand. And it's just things like that. Like it'll just get stuck in a branch, or it's not going to pick up your leaves. It's not going to do things like that. And then when you start thinking about it, you go, imagine, like, remember what Tesla was saying back in 2014, 2015 about their self-driving stuff. I remember I was reading, a lot of stuff about, oh, it's not that far away. We're 2023. And the self-driving stuff, it exists. But I think last year is when they only really just started really releasing proper self-driving stuff. And it's still beta. And the money in that industry is way more than anything in the mower industry. So you're not going to get full automatic mowers that do everything because it's actually really complicated. That's what the self-driving is. It's really complicated. Mowing is more complicated in some aspects than self-driving once you put on a whippersnipper and an edger. Once you have an exposed blade that's actually digging into the ground or an exposed blade that's vertical, the safety stuff is going to go through the roof. And then when you start talking about moving branches out the way or bagging leaves or things like that, you're talking really, really sophisticated, complicated machinery. I think by that point, we'll want the Automowers, because one of the things that's happening in the gardening industry, if you try to employ people, it's so hard to get good people. And I think a lot of businesses, they'll be like, here's my prediction for the future, which is free advice for anybody to take or to leave because it's free, lower your expectations. But I think what will happen is, I think cylinder mowing is the future in a lot of different ways. It is a niche. It will always be a niche. But I think what will happen is the businesses that do cylinder mowing, the highest end clients, I think auto mowing will become like the middle ground stuff. The cheap stuff will be people who just let it go and they need someone to come slash in all the time. But over a long period of time, I'm talking decades, there will still be a status symbol with a striped up, very low cut cylinder lawn. And I think the average person will go auto mower. And I think what will happen is a lot of our industry will be glad of that, because people will get more and more sophisticated, more intelligent, and they'll want to do more fancy things. And so the budget will be to do fancier things and people showing off their yard and their wealth and having their garden as a status symbol. And you won't be able to do like a 160 kilo cylinder mower. It has to be that heavy to get some of the finishes. When are they going to put that auto mower in a residential? How do you turn it? Like, it's just, I think that's the last frontier on the auto mower scene. And so I think to future-proof your business, if you're worried about eventually in a long time, because you're still like, again, the leaves, the sticks, multiple sections, edging, whippersnipping, blowing down paths if you've got, debris falling on it, like the full service you get from a contractor.
Retained section.
Yeah, exactly. So again, like, we can't talk over each other, so Ben's trying to give me some hand signals on the pod. But look, I think there's a long way to go before an auto mower actually covers the industry. But I still think when that happens, let's say in 10, 15, 20 years time, I still think people will still want a cylinder cut lawn eventually, because they want the stripes and it'll be a status symbol. Now, I could be completely wrong, but that's just my opinion.
Yeah, look, I don't really have any predictions, just because, like, CatchPro has been known for like innovative stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, I don't want to be a hater in any way, shape, or form, but I think, yeah, one thing I've learned in the last couple of weeks is, this concept, it's so far from even, like, it's not even scraping the surface. Yeah, like, I was really worried about the contractor community, sort of thinking like, it's just another, it's just history repeating itself. We saw, in the 60s and 50s and stuff, you saw, all the guys working in the factories being replaced by these robots doing stuff. And then,
Yep.
later on we see, computers and, even like say through COVID, for example, like now you've got like huge populations of people that don't even go to an office anymore. They just work from home. Um, so there's like so many things do change, but at the same time they still do stay the same. So I think initially I was kind of like, you know, it would be sad to see the contractor market being depleted by this new concept. But like you sort of said, I think it's probably 20 years away at a minimum, and I think even once people sort of experience it to a certain point, maybe they'll revert back. Like I've said it before publicly, like have you ever seen one of those things hit a dog shit before?
No. That's a good point.
Like you watch it on YouTube, man, it is nothing. Literally sprays it everywhere. Like it's like if you had a dog, you couldn't like there's no way, like you can't use one. And heaps of people have dogs, right? So but anyway, I thought it would be interesting to sort of get an organic, because I haven't spoken to you personally about it.
No, well, this is what I'm getting at. I think right now it's the answer for 1%, 2% maybe of the population. Usually, larger properties who like your glypho spraying your edges anyway. You don't want to do too much. You're not trying to get that amazing finish. It's more about saving time. There are some commercial applications, I agree, but the market, like when Automowers will truly compete with a professional service is when they can, pick up dog crap, when they can move a large branch, when they can pick up leaves, when they can blow down paths so there's no trip hazards on it, when they can edge and whippersnip. And you think I think completely self-driving cars, because of the money, will be in operation before completely self-mowing stuff. And I think well before, because people will be like, no, the safety hazards of having a mower that has an open blade or an open nylon line hitting something and having been completely unaware about the people around it, or just something breaking. I think it'll be a long time before a government would allow that to be legal. You know what I mean? So I think there's a long time before that. And then I think by the time that happens, say in 20 years' time, it won't be a shock to the industry because we would have seen it slowly happening. And one of the things that I'm looking forward to that day in a sense, because what will happen is people will still have the budget to do their gardening. And I just think what it will do is it'll allow a lot of people who were in their 40s and 50s who loved gardening to continue doing it in a less physical capacity. So they're identifying and solving problems rather than physically mowing. And gardening will become, like, wouldn't you love to just go around and maybe, mow the 30% or 40% of the blocks that automowers aren't useful on, and the ones where they are, you're identifying problems. And so look, I don't think it's this shock to the industry where one day automowers are going to come in and all of a sudden 50% of the market's lost. It's just they're not there yet,
Yeah, cool.
Look, mate, this is 2020. I don't know where my wife is because she went out with the kids, and I was like, "Yeah, we'll record the podcast." That was good. Look, do you know what we should do, Ben? I would like to come back over east, and because my family's pretty close to you, we should do a three-way with me, you, and BJ live, and we should also record a podcast with the three of us. What do you reckon?
Well, I do get a little bit nervous about live stuff. Only because
I don't mean live. I mean not this internet stuff that's stuffing up the conversation from being a little bit more natural.
Oh, absolutely, man. Like, yeah, I think you're going to see more of that stuff coming out. BJ's going to do an event over here, and yeah, I think collaborative stuff where we can all get together and just like I said, it helps the community get things from different angles. Maybe not take any thing as gospel, but just to get other people's experiences and stuff like that. I think it's good for everyone.
Yeah, I mean, everybody should agree with everything I say 100% of the time because I am the cult leader. Give me all your money, all right? Okay.
Don't don't egg me on. We're
Okay.
about to we're sign out. Don't get me in trouble now.
I've got some Kool-Aid in the fridge, so we better move on. All right, man. I've loved having you on. Everybody, jump on CatchPro, buy some stuff. If you haven't got an equipment defender rack, that's his most underrated product. Go get that. And look, we'll see you guys in the next podcast.
Thanks for having me, Luke. Cheers, bro.